another bit we have brought back this year is Cameron's Poetry Corner.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was a big hit last year. We all enjoyed that. Did you had some poems prepared for us?
Yeah, I have one for today. I thought I would start off with something that is pretty easy, pretty recognizable.
Do you want me to try for you?
Please.
I'll do my best not to crash the bus a third time.
That's open. I'm not going to lift that up.
Poetry Corner is my chance to be pretentious in hopefully a fairly entertaining way, or at least a useful way.
Oh, we have a bumper for it. We have a darkness.
All right. So this one is actually uncredited and untitled, but this was something that arrested my attention when I was a kid, because it kind of cropped up in a very unexpected place. I sit in my cubicle here on the mother world. When I die, they will put my body in a box and dispose of it in the cold ground. And in all the million ages to come, I will never breathe or laugh or twitch again. So won't you run and play with me here among the teeming mass of humanity? The universe has spared us this moment. So this comes from a video game. This is from Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. For the technology, the way Alpha Centauri worked was that whenever it was a Civilization 2 sequel, basically the same game, but set, taking another step further back. Civilization 2 was a video game from the 90s. Okay, got that done. The win condition for it, or one of the win conditions for it, was you sent a colony ship to someplace else. Alpha Centauri was released a couple of years later and picked up that thread. So whenever you researched a new technology in Alpha Centauri, it would usually give you a quick little voice clip with a description of the technology, but because things were science fiction-y, it wasn't like in Civilization where you would get the wheel or archery or the printing press. They had to come up with things for like synthetic nanomaterials and organic super lubricants. This was for a technology called habitation dome. And usually it would have one of the faction leaders reading you a little story about what the technology meant to the people who lived with them. And it was, it dipped quite a lot into like little snippets of pop philosophy and art, and it gave you a lot of context for what these people were like in a really interesting way. And usually, like as the game progressed, it started to move away from classical philosophy. Early on, there's a lot of like Aristotle and Nicomachean ethics, and then worryingly, like more stuff like Thus Spoke Zarathustra starts to come up. And then it's mainly the faction leaders being like, we're in some deep trouble here as the end game approaches. But it would be like, you know, quotes attributed to Plato or quotes attributed to a faction leader. This was pointedly, I think, the only anonymous attribution in the game, which I think makes it reasonable to assume that this is the lead developer, Brian Reynolds, speaking to us directly. And it made an impression on me, because until this point, you know, I had thought of poetry as something that, you know, you read Edgar Allan Poe or Wordsworth or a T.S. Eliot in school, and it's something that you do for credit, but this arrested me at the time, and I appreciated it.
That was really nice, Cameron. I would love to be able to play Alpha Centauri again, but
It sucks.
It's so hard. 90s game design was a heck of a thing.
It is.
Figuring out.
Yeah, no, it was excellent at the time, but it's very, very difficult to play now if you're used to the flow of a game like Civilization 5 or 6, or that it's quite clearly something that is extremely primitive by modern standards.
Yeah.
Some games have aged relatively well. Chrono Trigger, you mentioned earlier, is still extremely playable. I think the original XCOM is still extremely playable. Some games are not, and that's okay. but we can still mine them for interesting conversation. Conversation. What was that?
A word.
A word.